The Ravens Preview Show with Andy Pollin starts right now.
It wasn't perfect, it wasn't pretty, but it was the Ravens.
Listen to all Ravens broadcasts right here on 6:30 a.m., the ESPN 630 app, or ESPN630DC.com.
And with 1:17 left to play, the Hayes in the barn.
Now, here's Andy Pollin.
And because of the Thursday night schedule, Ravens Preview becomes Ravens Review after their incredible 35-34 win over the Cincinnati Bengals last night. We are joined by the editor of the Russell Street Report, Tony Lombardi, who has been around football long enough that I can confidently ask this question about a team that has a legacy that includes Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Rod Woodson and has been built on the foundation of defense for years and years and years. Tony, when the hell did the Baltimore Ravens become the 1983 San Diego Chargers? What's going on here?
It's really a shift in the DNA of the franchise, really, Andy, because I had a conversation several years ago with Steve Bisciotti, and at that time we were lamenting the Ravens' struggles on offense. And he asked me, he said, would you rather the team be really stout defensively or really explosive offensively? And I think my answer was partly driven by the fact that I grew up as a Ravens fan, grew up in Baltimore, native Baltimorean, and the things you just alluded to, the Ray Lewis's, the Rod Woodsons, the Ed Reeds, all those guys, I said, I'd rather they be better on defense. So fans today, even though it was an exciting game, Ravens won, advanced to 7-3, half game behind the Steelers in the AFC North. They are just frustrated with the results of that game because that DNA that was part of the organization is also part of the fan base's DNA, that they expect better defense. And to see what's out there right now, it's an adjustment process for Ravens fans. A W is a W, but at the end of the day, this is something totally different for this franchise and its fan base.
Yeah, and I know that football has changed dramatically over the years, and the passing game and wide-open offenses is a lot more than it used to be. But still, in the entire history of the Super Bowl era, has there ever been a team that could be number one offensively and number 27 in defense?
Well, I saw something this morning on ESPN, and they pointed out something similar, and they said that there's never been a Super Bowl winner who fielded the last place or the worst passing defense in the league. And that's the case right now with the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely remarkable. And if you point to the talent, now they did have an injury last night, but, these are not guys. I mean, I'm here in Washington, and they just picked up Lattimore, who's, a Pro Bowl caliber player. That's been a need for this team for some time to improve the secondary. Right going into the season, Tony, nobody was saying, oh, God, we got a real mess here in the secondary. Nobody said that, did they?
No, they didn't. In fact, when I was out at training camp, some of the media guys, the beat guys, were talking about, Eric DeCosta is going to have to make some tough decisions because there's so much talent in the secondary that they're going to have to trade some guys because they're too good to cut. And look at us 10 weeks later. It's crazy that this team, with all the talent, as you mentioned, they had a lot of attrition when it comes to the coaching staff. They lost Denard Wilson, who really took care of the back end of that defense last season when they were the number one defense. And you lost, of course, Mike McDonald, who's the head coach in Seattle, and then Anthony Weaver, who's now the defensive coordinator in Miami. So they lost a lot of coaching talent there. But you look at the players, they didn't lose a lot. They added a few pieces, and you wonder why the results are so different. I get that Zach Orr is a rookie defensive play caller. He's never called plays in his life up until this year. You knew that there would be some growing pains with that, but we're in week 10 now. 10 games under the belt, and it's still the same thing. And they brought on Dean Pease as a consultant,
right,
much to the chagrin of Ravens fans who just always looked at Dean as being a guy that had this bend but don't break philosophy. He was good in zone, but even that's not working right now for the Baltimore Ravens.
We're talking to Tony Lombardi of the Russell Street Report as we do Ravens review today after their 35-34 win over the Cincinnati Bengals last night. That said, two remarkable games this year. A 41-38 game and a 35-34 game last night. In the two games, Lamar Jackson has thrown for 638 yards and 8 touchdowns, and Joe Burrow 820 yards and 9 touchdowns, yet it's Ravens 2-0. So while they do have these defensive deficiencies, clearly they have enough, at least in this series and in 7 of the 10 games so far this year, to make the one play that puts them over the top. Is that basically the playoff experience that they have that's made that possible, or how do you look at it?
I think the combination of having Lamar Jackson, who's at the top of his game, I mean, he's a 2-time MVP, and he's playing better in 2024 than either of those other seasons when he won the MVP. So you've got that going on. I think he's put to bed the argument that he's a running back playing quarterback now. I think he's a pretty good, darn good quarterback. And then you add Derrick Henry to the mix. Then you bring on guys like Rashad Bateman, who's starting to play like a first-round guy that he was drafted to be. Zay Flowers has come into his own. You got Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, and now they've just added this kid Keaton Mitchell, who was an explosive player last season, who got hurt against the Chargers late in the season, and now he's back. So there's a lot of weapons, and Lamar is really mastering how to put those weapons into place to succeed. It's his second year with Todd Monken, and I think all those things are really raising the level of play of the Ravens offense in its entirety.
Also, I think if you ask coaches what's the number one stat you look at, turnover margin. And they're not turning the ball over. Am I right about this? Only 2 interceptions this year for Lamar?
24 touchdown passes, which was the total he had last year for a full season, and just 2 interceptions.
Yeah, and if you look at the way last night's game unfolded, the forced fumble by Marlon Humphrey, really ignited that comeback, right?
It did. I mean, the Bengals had the ball. I think it was 2nd and 5. Chase Brown ran it for 4 yards. They were going to get close to a first down, I think around the 33-yard line, and they fumbled the ball. The whole momentum shifted, and I tell you what, though, Justin Tucker missing that extra point, it was just like, you do all this to get back, and that could deflate the whole momentum. But fortunately for the Ravens, it did not, at least offensively.
Yeah, and it's probably blasphemy to say this, but a reliable kicker is also very much a key, especially as you get later on and into the cold weather. I mean, is it reached the point where there are real concerns about Justin Tucker, or where is everybody on that?
I think there are concerns. Now, I don't know if the coaching staff shares those concerns, but I know the media and the fan base certainly have those concerns. And it looks like it's the same thing when he's missing. He's pulling the ball to the left. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of a golfer who opens up his hips and keeps pulling his drives off the tee to the left. And I think Tucker's doing a little bit of that. Some people want to say there's a change in the holder, because the punter, Jordan Stout, is now the holder. But this is year 2 of that operation, so I don't think that that's in play right now. There's something else going on, and I think it's mostly with number 9.
Yeah, and, we're old enough to remember the name Steve Blass. I know he was a pitcher, not a kicker. But even the greats, it could suddenly disappear. I mean, and you'd hate to think that with all he's done in his career, he's the greatest kicker of all time, that they get into a situation in a playoff game and he misses an extra point or a chippy field goal, and you go, oh, my God, we've been climbing this mountain for all these years and riding his back so much, and then it happens like that. I mean, that's entirely possible.
It is. I mean, I kind of project this. It's the playoffs now, and Justin Tucker sent out there for a 43-yard field goal. That's a chip shot for him during his career, but not so much anymore.
No.
I think Ravens fans will be on the edge of their seat waiting for that thing to go through the uprights.
Yeah, who'd have thought that about Justin Tucker? Last thing, and this is more of a league issue, but it showed up last night in a big way, the officiating. And I was reading a Connor Orr column today in SI, and he said, if the league really wanted to fix this, they could. And with all the technology that's available to them, they haven't. What is your view of this? Because there were bad calls both ways last night, and certainly a crushing one for Cincinnati at the end of the game. Will this be addressed, or does the league actually like us to do this this Monday morning, or in this case Friday morning quarterbacking about the officiating?
That's a great debatable discussion. I would think that they would want to clean it up and make the game more enjoyable, because you hear Roger Goodell always talking about the fan experience. I don't know if there's any fans out there, particularly in Cincinnati right now, who had a great experience watching that game last night. It's ridiculous how many bad calls are made in key situations. And, Andy, I got to say this about Joe Burrow. You know, I respected him as a player before, but for him to get hit in the face twice yesterday, to get a late hit from Marlon Humphrey yesterday and not say a word, my respect for that guy is off the charts right now.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, and you're right. He does get credit for that. But maybe that's also a smart move in that they review all the officiating. And maybe from now on, he's going to get more close calls because of it, because he didn't complain about it. I don't know. That could...
and that kind of thing, I hear what you're saying, and I'm sure that goes into the thought process, but it shouldn't. They should call the play right on the field each time, mutually exclusive from things that happened before.
All right, a couple of tough games coming up after this mini bye. Pittsburgh and then Houston. Then, you got to wonder about, where they are at this point. Pittsburgh, and the Chargers, who are playing a lot better. Where do you think they are? And in this stretch run where you're going to be playing playoff teams like the Eagles and like the Steelers twice, what do you look for in the back half of the season now?
It's really tough to say because of the way the defense is playing. You would think that at some point in time it'll gel, that they'll start playing better. But I think the teams that the Ravens are going to struggle with are teams that do have good defenses, and you just mentioned two of them, the Chargers and the Steelers, and both of those games are away for the Ravens. So when you're playing tougher defenses away from home and your defense doesn't do much to stop anybody, you put a lot on Lamar's back. You're asking him to carry that team, and he's done it so far, but at some point in time, if he has an off game, I can't imagine a situation right now where the Ravens can win.
Yeah, and again, they got the 3 losses, so the deeper they go in the playoffs, the more it means that they're going to have to play on the road. So that's very key. Always great to talk to you, Tony. Thanks very much. Tell everybody how they can get the Russell Street Report.
It's RussellStreetReport.com online, and you can find us at Russell Street Report on Twitter and Instagram, and then on Facebook you can find us as Ravens 24/7.
Very good. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Andy.
It's Tony Lombardi, Russell Street Report. Locker Room React to the win over Cincinnati next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
Ravens on 3, 1, 2, 3.
This is the Ravens Preview Show presented by Verizon. Here's Andy Pollin.
All right, Ravens have a Sunday off after their 35-34 win over Cincinnati last night. They are at Pittsburgh a week from Sunday, and then 2 weeks from Monday, the 25th, they're going to play the Chargers on the road in a Monday night game. That'll be followed by a home game against Philadelphia. So the schedule really toughens up. And what we saw last night was yet another shootout. Ravens won the first game in Cincinnati in October 41-38. And they won last night 35-34, though if you turned off the game at halftime, as truth be told I did, I never would have imagined that they would put up 28 points in the second half, which is the most any team has done this season. And it was just one of those nights where they couldn't get out of the starting gates. The first quarter, time of possession was incredible for Cincinnati. And this was John Harbaugh's take as to why they were slow to get out of the blocks.
Offensively, we couldn't get started. We had way too many first play of the drive problems, whether it was we didn't execute great or whether we had, just pre-snap penalties that brought it back. Those kind of things were just not good. And we couldn't get started. When you can't get started, then it's hard to get anything going because you don't have enough plays to do it.
And here they were in the third quarter. It's 21-7. And it's looking like, okay, this is a game where the Ravens offense isn't going to get cranked up. It's not going to resemble the first game. And then sometimes it's a spark that does it. And in this case, it appears that it was a forced fumble by Marlon Humphrey.
I really felt so with the fans. I think we were kind of on the sideline like, man, we don't want to lose the fans. I think there were some boos that came through. And so that kind of got everybody back in decent spirits. So and then the offense scored. So, yeah, I felt like that kind of got everybody back in the game, and then the fans kind of let us out the rest of the game.
When you hear those boos, just what's going through your head just when you hear that?
When you say it again?
Hear the boos, the home crowd just.
For me, we got passionate fans, so I think our boos are usually never unwarranted. So I felt we were playing a little flat, offense and defense. So, we just got to get going. So never no ill will towards that.
When the defense or when offense decides to go for 2 against you like that late in the game, do you take that as a personal challenge in that moment, or what's the feeling?
Yeah, it is, man. I mean, they're Joe Burrow, and they're a very confident group. As Joe Burrow, he does not care whether you're covered or not. He's gonna throw it. So we kind of expected them to go for 2. And we were able to get a stop and win the game.
Which was really remarkable given the night that Burrow had. He was 34 of 56 for 428 yards. He also threw 4 touchdown passes in this game. He had a rating of 108.3, QBR 63.7. I mean, that should be good enough to win a game, but in this case, it was not, as the offense for the Ravens was just a little bit better. And the one touchdown that they got in the first half was from Mark Andrews, who was also on his way to helping them in the second half with 6 catches to ignite the turnaround.
It was more of a team thing. I think the team was, really clicking. The defense, getting turnovers, and for us, just being able to move the ball, be efficient, and just understand that we're going to have to move the ball to win the game and score some points, and that's what we did. And but again, it was all phases of the ball. The guys making plays and stepping up.
Yeah, the Humphrey fumble, obviously, forced fumble was a big factor. But the fourth quarter that Lamar Jackson had is remarkable. Best fourth quarter of his career, and just about perfect. It was perfect. His passer rating 158.3 in the fourth quarter, threw for 197 yards and 3 touchdowns in 1 quarter. This is Andrews on what the second half means to the team.
It's huge. It's a lot of teams can kind of go in the tank and shut it down. When things aren't going our way, and we fought an uphill battle for most of the game. And I think again, just the belief in the fight and the resiliency that the guys had throughout 4 quarters, and just understand that we have no quit. We're always going to fight to the end and make it tough, and that's all phases. So I'm proud of the guys.
Not only is Lamar Jackson a 2-time MVP and may win his 3rd this year, but he's been around for a long time. And chemistry helps. And Mark Andrews has been around for a long, long time. And this was the rundown in the locker room from Lamar on how he made that first touchdown happen.
The touchdown to Andrews, did he improvise that route?
He did.
He did?
Yeah,
is that just something from playing with him so much that you expected him to do?
Jeff, we've been together for quite some time, so Mark gonna do something crazy, and then him gonna be here. We sync with it, so he just did a great job right there, being Andrews.
Yeah, see, that's what chemistry will do, and great quarterbacks and great receivers. Sometimes it's sometimes it's just a nod. It's like what's happening with Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels. They're developing that kind of chemistry, and it's just they come to the line of scrimmage, they see what the coverage is, and they can make something happen on the fly as they did last night. The last thing from Lamar is about the 2 shootouts that have gone on between he and Joe Burrow, and we've had great quarterback matchups over the years, going back to Unitas and Starr, and right through Manning and Brady, and now this looks like that. These are 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league, and the numbers for the 2 games they played this year, absolutely remarkable. Lamar has thrown for 638 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2 games. Back in the day, that was a season. Joe Burrow has thrown for 820 yards and 9 touchdowns in the 2 games, yet he's 0-2 against Lamar this year and 1-6 against him all time. But there are more shootouts to come. These are guys who are both young quarterbacks, both in their mid-20s, and we're going to see this play out twice a year for a long, long time. This is Lamar on that.
That's a great quarterback over there. It's a lot of great quarterbacks in the league, not just us 2. But and it's a divisional game. I just know it's going to be a dogfight with regardless, because he got dog in him.
How different do those division games feel? I mean, you obviously just win one now, you got one next week. I mean, how different from a regular game is it?
I'll say it's like a playoff game. We see each other twice a year. We pretty much know each other somewhat, and guys just trying to get after it.
Yep, and they did last night. What a great game, one of the great games of the year, as they hold the Bengals out of the end zone on that last 2-point conversion attempt. They're 7-3 with a mini bye coming up, playing at Pittsburgh a week from Sunday. As for the numbers that they have as a team, and I talked about this with Tony Lombardi, They're 7-3. That's the most important number. They're number one in offense, averaging over 440 yards a game. Yet, they are 27th in the league in defense, 367 yards a game, and their defense is a sieve right now in the passing game. Passing game, realize that that there were 470 yards passing and 5 touchdowns from Cincinnati last night. That's enough to with the offense they have. That's enough to overcome that. But that's the big concern as they get deeper and deeper into the season. And when you start to play, certainly playoff games, but cold weather games late in the season in Baltimore, 1st of December, Philadelphia at home. They got to play at New York on December 15th. I know the Giants are a bad team, but that's a tough team to play on the road in bad weather. Pittsburgh comes to Baltimore on the 21st of December, and they play at Houston. That's a Christmas Day game. They're at Houston on Christmas Day and then close out the season against the Cleveland Browns at home. They will be a playoff team, but they may be playing playoff games on the road, which could mean going to Kansas City when it's 3 degrees in January. Not fun. But for now, they're sitting pretty at 7-3 record-wise with an offense that's unstoppable right now. Unfortunately for them, the defense can't stop anybody, and they have to survive shootouts like last night. Thanks to Tony Lombardi, the Russell Street Report, for coming on. Thanks to Isaac Kuhn-Harris for running the show. Thanks to all of you who listen. Have a great weekend. Bram is next, and I'll see you back Monday morning at 9 a.m.